I want you to take a second and just imagine your very last dog walk. Like, really picture it in your mind.
Yeah, try to remember exactly how it felt.
Right. Was it this, relaxing, peaceful stroll through the neighborhood? Or was it more like a really stressful, exhausting tug of war where your dog just seemed to ignore everything you said, barked at, and well, every single thing that moved, and constantly wandered just a little too far away?
I mean, if you're nodding your head to that second scenario right now, you are absolutely not alone. So many people deal with that.
Totally. It feels like a universal experience.
It really is. And, we project this enormous amount of human emotion onto our dogs when we're out there, just standing on the sidewalk, holding the leash, getting frustrated. We call them stubborn or spiteful, or we just assume they're deliberately trying to make our lives difficult.
Like they woke up and chose chaos.
Exactly. But the truth is, behind every behavior that you might label as, like, naughty or crazy, there is simply a biological nervous system that's just trying to make sense of a highly stimulating world.
And that's exactly what we are decoding today. We are taking the complex science of canine ethology, which is, how dogs biologically behave and perceive the world, and we're translating it for the everyday dog owner.
Because it's so important to figure out why your dog reacts the way they do on a walk.
Right, like how they actually map the space around them. And looking at some practical, science-backed ways to make the time outside genuinely enjoyable for both of you, for human and hound.
Yeah, and to get there, to really understand it, we have to start by looking inward first. Because before we can understand how a dog acts outside on a chaotic street, we really must understand their baseline internal processing.
Okay, so like their hardware, basically.
Yeah, exactly. In canine ethology, we categorize dogs by their innate types of higher nervous activity, which is a fancy way of talking about how their brain handles two competing forces, excitation and inhibition.
Excitation and inhibition.
Right. And to really illustrate this, let's look at two contrasting extremes. So we have the phlegmatic dog, and then on the other end, the choleric dog.
Okay, wait. I hear words like phlegmatic and choleric, and my mind immediately goes to, like, ancient Greek medicine, not, a golden retriever.
I know, it sounds super archaic. The terminology definitely borrows from that era, but in ethology, it actually describes the speed and the balance of the dog's nervous system.
Oh, interesting. So it's about processing speed.
Basically, yeah. Let's start with the phlegmatic type. So this is your balanced, much slower, typically heavier set dog. Their nervous system processes the transition between excitement and calm very, very gradually.
So they don't just freak out of nowhere.
Exactly. The neurotransmitters that are responsible for getting them all hyped up, they release slowly, and they dissipate slowly.
Ah, I see. So this is like the classic family dog just, snoozing on the porch, totally unbothered by the delivery driver dropping a package really loudly on the steps.
That is the absolute perfect picture of a phlegmatic dog. Because their neurological reflexes build so slowly, they might take a few extra repetitions to learn a new trick during a training session.
They're not the fastest learners.
Right. But the massive evolutionary trade-off for that is their incredible adaptability. They are friendly, they're non-conflicting, and they're rarely provoked into extreme reactions.
Which makes them, I imagine, pretty incredible companions for a really noisy, unpredictable household.
Yeah.
Like with kids running around.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're the stabilizing force. But then on the flip side, we have the choleric dog.
Just the word itself, choleric, it sounds intense, like very reactive.
And they are. The choleric nervous system is highly unbalanced and just extremely sensitive. So in these dogs, the neurological reflexes of excitation, the hype, completely overpower their brain's ability to inhibit that excitement.
So they skyrocket.
Literally. They go from 0 to 100 in a microsecond. Their brain just floods with excitatory chemicals, but they completely lack the internal regulatory mechanism to clear those chemicals out and actually calm back down.
Wow, okay, so it's not just that they have a massive engine, it's that their biological brake pads are completely worn out.
Yes, exactly.
Like, they have all the acceleration in the world, but their nervous system literally lacks the mechanism to hit the brakes.
That is the exact biological mechanism at play, yeah. Their primary hardwired response to anything new or startling is an active defensive reaction. They are agile, they are tireless, and they are constantly on high alert.
I mean, evolutionarily, that sounds like a superpower.
Oh, it was. Those traits were crucial for hunting or guarding breeds that needed, lightning-fast reflexes just to survive.
Right, but in a modern suburban environment.
Yeah, that's where it gets tricky. If that dog is not handled correctly, That raw survival energy just manifests as dominant behavior
Mm.
or severe reactivity.
Yeah, I can easily picture someone dragging this lunging, barking choleric dog down the street and just labeling them a bad dog, which is sad. So, I mean, is a choleric dog destined to just be a complete nightmare on a leash?
No, not at all.
Oh.
The context changes everything here. A choleric dog is actually brilliant for dynamic, high-intensity dog sports.
Like agility or frisbee?
Yeah, agility, fly ball, protection work, where their endless energy and instant reflexes are a huge asset. The behavior only becomes a nightmare when the environment and the handler are a total mismatch.
Right, because the handler doesn't know how to drive a sports car, basically.
Exactly. Because these dogs have highly sensitive nervous systems, they act like emotional sponges. If a choleric dog is handled by an owner who is tense and frustrated and just tightly gripping that leash,
Oh, I've seen that. The white knuckle grip.
right, that physical tension actually travels straight down the nylon line. The dog's nervous system mirrors the handler's anxiety, and the situation just inevitably explodes.
Man, that makes so much sense. But knowing your dog has a choleric temperament, that's really only half the battle, right? Because that internal nervous system is constantly colliding with external triggers out on the sidewalk.
Yes, exactly.
And to understand why that collision results in, like, a full-on barking fit, we really have to look at the invisible geometry surrounding your dog.
Oh, the invisible geometry, yes. This brings us to the fascinating work of the Swiss zoologist Heini Hediger.
Hediger, right.
Yeah, so back in the 1950s,
Hmm.
he introduced this concept of spatial zones. He observed that every animal, and that includes our domestic dogs, basically carries around a set of invisible concentric safety bubbles.
Okay, so like a Russian nesting doll of personal space.
That's a great way to put it. And a dog's reaction to absolutely anything in the environment is dictated almost entirely by where a potential threat is located within these specific bubbles.
It's almost like they are walking around inside a giant, invisible Venn diagram of fear. So what are the specific zones we really need to be aware of?
There are three critical boundaries. You have the observation distance, the flight distance, and the critical distance.
Okay, let's break those down. Observation distance first.
So the outermost bubble is the observation distance. Imagine you are walking your dog and a person wearing like a big bulky winter coat appears a full block away.
Okay, pretty far away.
Right. The stranger enters the observation distance. At this point, your dog registers a novel stimulus. Their head goes up, their ears prick forward, and they fix their gaze just to gather data.
Just checking it out.
Exactly. But crucially, their body remains physically relaxed. They feel absolutely no immediate need to escape.
Right, they're just acting as a scout, just saying, hey, there's a guy over there.
Yep. But then the person in the bulky coat keeps walking straight towards you, and they breach that second bubble, the flight distance.
And I'm guessing this is where things start to escalate.
Big time. The moment that boundary is crossed, the entire physiology of the dog completely alters. The flight distance is the dog's true safety perimeter. When an intruder steps over this invisible line, the dog's sympathetic nervous system fires.
The alarm bells go off.
Exactly.
Mm.
This is the biological alarm system. Blood flow actually shifts away from their digestive tract and rushes straight to their muscles. Cortisol and adrenaline spike in their bloodstream.
Wow, so their fight or flight response just completely goes offline from rational thought.
Completely.
Hmm.
And their absolute first instinct, always, is flight. The dog will actively attempt to create physical distance between themselves and the threat. You'll see their center of gravity drop. They'll
Yeah.
tuck their tail firmly beneath their body, they pin their ears back, and they just try to retreat.
They want out of there.
Right. And it's important to note that the size of this flight bubble is highly variable. So for a confident, well-socialized dog, the flight distance might just be a few feet.
Makes sense.
But for a fearful or maybe a traumatized dog, that invisible bubble could stretch across an entire football field.
Oh, wow. So their biology is just screaming at them to run away. But, you know, if they are attached to a standard 4-foot leash or they get backed up against a parked car or something, they physically cannot retreat.
They're trapped.
Right. And the person in the coat keeps coming and the threat pushes into that final bubble.
And that is when the threat enters the critical distance. This is the absolute red zone. The dog perceives that their biological integrity, their very life, is in immediate, unavoidable danger.
Because they can't run.
Exactly. Because their escape route is physically blocked by the leash or the environment, Their brain just bypasses all observation and flight protocols.
Let me try to put this in human terms because this feels incredibly relatable to me.
Oh, absolutely, go for it.
It's like being trapped in a tiny elevator with a wasp.
Right.
If the wasp is hovering on the completely opposite side of the elevator, you're in the observation phase.
You're staring at it, tracking its movements.
Exactly. But you are generally staying calm. You are consciously assessing the threat without physiological panic.
Right, you're not freaking out yet.
But then the wasp flies across the elevator and hovers right next to your shoulder. That breaches your flight distance, your heart rate spikes, you suck in your breath, and you physically lean away to put distance between you and that stinger.
You want to escape.
You desperately want to escape.
Ugh.
And you hit the back corner of the elevator walls. You can't retreat any further. And then the wasp lands directly on your face. Right. That is the critical distance. You don't calmly assess the situation anymore. You completely panic. You start swatting wildly. Your arms are flailing. You might even scream. You just go into pure, blind survival mode.
That is the most perfect analogy for what happens. We see this biological panic all the time on the sidewalk. When your dog lunges, snaps, growls, and barks frantically at another dog or a stranger, they are not trying to be the alpha or dominate the street.
They're just frantically swatting at the wasp on their face.
Exactly. The dog has been forced into their critical distance because the leash physically eliminated their ability to utilize their flight distance.
Wow. That completely reframes the entire concept of a naughty dog. I mean, if the leash is the main culprit, trapping them in that critical survival zone, how do we physically walk them without constantly crashing into these invisible boundaries?
Well, we had to change the science of the walk itself because the most common struggle dog owners report is a dog that pulls relentlessly on the leash, choking themselves, or wandering so far away they ignore every command.
Yeah, and the human instinct there is to constantly reel the dog in tightly or just stand there yelling their name repeatedly.
Which never, ever works.
No. I see people at the park yelling, "Come here, come," like 20 times, while the dog is just happily sniffing a tree, completely ignoring them.
Because when you yell their name 50 times while they are engrossed in a really interesting smell, their brain literally categorizes your voice as irrelevant environmental noise.
Oh, like white noise.
Basically, it becomes like the wind rustling the leaves to them. So, to teach a dog to respect spatial boundaries, you must shift the learning from their ears to their body.
Okay, how do we do that?
We do this by using a long tracking line. So this is a leash that is typically 10 to 20 meters long, and it's attached to a back clip harness.
The harness is important.
Very important to protect their delicate neck vertebrae.
Gotcha. But wait, a 20-meter leash seems like it would just create way more chaos. How does giving them more rope actually teach them to stay close?
I know it sounds totally counterintuitive, but it relies on developing the dog's proprioception.
Proprioception, meaning their body awareness.
Exactly. It's their brain's ability to sense where their body is in physical space. So you put the long line on, and you simply let the dog explore, and you remain completely silent.
No yelling their name.
No talking at all. When the dog runs and reaches the very end of the 20 meters, you do not yank them back. You simply step firmly on the line, or you just hold your ground. You become an immovable tree.
Okay.
The dog hits the end of the line, feels the physical pressure of the harness, and is forced to stop.
Ah, so they are learning the perimeter through a physical sensation rather than just verbal nagging.
Yes. Their brain naturally begins to map that physical boundary. Over weeks of consistency, the dog internalizes the exact radius of their freedom.
That's amazing.
It is. They will naturally begin to slow down or even check in with you right before they hit the end of the line because they have mapped the geometry of the walk on their own terms.
That makes a lot of sense.
But, and there is a crucial warning in the ethology research here, owners often see progress with this, and they take the long line off way too early.
Oh, right. They think problem solved.
Exactly. But doing so is like driving into heavy, chaotic city traffic the very first morning after you get your driver's license.
Yeah, you might theoretically know the rules of the road, but your brain hasn't developed the automatic reflexes to actually hit the brakes when a delivery truck suddenly pulls out in front of you.
That's it perfectly. The dog has not built the automated habits yet. The process requires gradually shortening the line. from 20 meters to 10 to 5 over months.
It's a slow process.
Very slow.
Yeah.
You only remove the physical boundary completely when the dog consistently makes the right choices in highly distracting environments.
Because if you unclip the leash and the dog immediately bolts across the park.
Then you have just gathered data proving they lacked the automated reflexes.
Yeah.
We went too fast.
Man, I can see how that structural training works beautifully for setting those physical boundaries. But what about highly active dogs? I imagine a young Labrador or a hunting breed walking slowly on a long line might not burn off that intense choleric energy we talked about earlier.
That's a great point. For dogs with high prey drive and just abundant energy, a passive walk is never going to satisfy their neurological needs. You have to engage their instincts constructively.
How so?
Introducing a structured game of fetch or retrieving at a distance is incredibly effective.
Oh, like with a ball or a dummy?
Right. It allows the dog to sprint and really burn off that physical adrenaline, but it keeps their brain entirely engaged with you as the handler. You become the source of the hunt and the reward, which naturally anchors them within a safe distance.
Okay, so physical boundaries keep the dog safe, but a walk isn't just about managing a perimeter. You actually want the dog to mentally engage with you. And, I always assumed dogs ignored us out there because their noses were just glued to the ground and they were overwhelmed by the thousands of smells.
Smell is a huge factor, yes.
But does their actual eyesight play a role in why they seem to tune us out?
Their visual biology is a massive piece of the puzzle, and it dictates exactly how we should be trying to get their attention. Dogs perceive the world visually in a completely different way than humans do.
How different?
Well, first, just look at the physical placement of their eyes on their skull. Because their eyes are set further apart, dogs possess an incredible 250-degree field of peripheral vision.
250 degrees, which means they can essentially see things happening slightly behind them without even turning their head.
Exactly. And their retinas are also packed with a high concentration of rod cells, which are specifically designed to detect motion in low light.
So they're great at spotting movement.
Oh, incredibly good. A healthy dog can visually spot the subtle movement of a prey animal up to 800 meters away.
800 meters is almost half a mile. That completely explains why my dog locks onto a squirrel 3 blocks down the street before I even know it's there.
It does. But there is a fascinating biological trade-off for that incredible long-distance motion detection. They struggle immensely to focus on stationary objects that are close to them.
Wait, really?
Yeah, their optical lenses just cannot quickly accommodate close vision. For any object inside a 50-centimeter radius, which is about 1.5 feet from their face, they are functionally blind.
You're kidding.
Nope. Up close like that, they must switch over to relying entirely on their olfactory system, their sense of smell.
Oh my gosh, so if I'm standing perfectly still, like a statue, staring down at my dog and shouting, "Sit, look at me," I am actually fighting against their visual biology.
It is the absolute worst strategy for gaining their focus. Because you are stationary and close, their motion-sensitive eyes effortlessly tune you out.
So what should we be doing instead?
If you want your dog to focus on you instead of the environment, you must flip the dynamic and become visually relevant. You have to use big, dynamic body movements.
Like waving my arms around.
Yes. Jump backward, wave your arms, or quickly change your walking direction without saying a single word. Be a moving, unpredictable target. This triggers their motion receptors and engages their natural instinct to track movement.
Wow, okay, well, if we're talking about their visual perception, I have to ask about color. Because the classic myth I grew up with was that dogs viewed the world like an old black and white television set.
Ah, yes. The black and white myth has been thoroughly debunked, but their color spectrum is severely restricted compared to ours.
Okay, so what can they see?
Well, human eyes generally have 3 types of color-detecting cone cells. Dogs only have 2. They are dichromatic, which basically means they are essentially red-green colorblind.
Red-green colorblind. Okay, if they cannot see red or green. I mean, think about the millions of classic bright red rubber dog balls sold in pet stores.
I know. It is a brilliant marketing choice for the human buyer, right? We love bright red, but it's terrible for the dog.
Because they literally can't see it.
If you launch a bright red ball into a field of lush green grass, the dog's eyes simply cannot differentiate the hues. To them, the red ball and the green grass blend into the exact same shade of muddy grayish yellow.
Wow.
The toy just becomes completely camouflaged.
And we have been throwing red balls into grass for decades, just watching the dog sniff around frantically to find it and secretly thinking like, oh, My dog just isn't very smart.
when in reality we handed them an impossible visual task and expected them to perform flawlessly.
That is wild. So what colors should we be buying?
If you want a toy that your dog can effortlessly track visually through the air and on the ground, it needs to be blue or yellow. Dogs process the blue and yellow spectrums brilliantly.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
It's precisely why professional agility courses paint their jumps and tunnels blue and yellow. It ensures the dogs can visually navigate the obstacles safely at top speed.
That is such a simple, actionable change. Buy blue and yellow toys, and suddenly you are working with their ethology instead of constantly fighting against it.
Exactly.
Yep.
It all comes back to understanding the biological machinery running inside the animal.
I mean, this has completely reframed how we should look at the leash, the walk, and the dog. We started by looking inward, recognizing whether we are dealing with a slow-to-arouse phlegmatic nervous system or a highly sensitive, rapid-fire choleric dog that just really needs a calm, steady hand.
Right. We learn to stop punishing the biology and start managing the environment.
Yeah, and we mapped out those invisible geometries of fear. The observation gathering phase, the flight distance where the adrenaline hits, and the critical distance where the leash traps them into that frantic survival response, like the wasp in the elevator.
The wasp in the elevator, yes. That's exactly it.
And then we talked about replacing that verbal nagging with proprioceptive learning using a long tracking line, giving them the physical space to map their own boundaries before we just, expect them to handle city traffic.
And we learn to become unpredictable and dynamic and visually stimulating in a color palette they can actually perceive. Blue and yellow.
It really makes you realize how much of what we call bad behavior is simply our failure to speak their biological language.
It really is. And I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder before you clip the leash on for your next walk.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about your own human version of a critical distance. Think about how your body tenses up, how your heart rate elevates when a stranger stands just 2 inches too close to you in a quiet elevator or a grocery store line.
Oh, I hate that. Instant anxiety.
Right. Now consider your dog. How often do we accidentally force our dogs into situations their nervous system simply cannot handle? We drag them toward a strange dog on the sidewalk for a quote-unquote friendly greeting, or we let a looming stranger reach over and pat them on top of the head, effectively trapping them in that critical red zone simply because they're physically tethered to us.
Because of the leash.
Yes. The next time you're out on the street, look down at the leash connecting you to them and ask yourself, whose safety bubble are you really protecting? Yours or theirs?
Wow. That thought alone will completely change the dynamic of your next walk. Hopefully, the time you spend outside with your dog will be a whole lot more peaceful, far less stressful, and filled with a lot more blue and yellow toys. Catch you next time.